Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
And live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello. Good morning, my friends. How are you doing this morning on this beautiful, bright, and okay, it's not bright. And it is beautiful though. I mean, it's it's nice. But it is Wednesday, and we are ready to enjoy a fantabulous day today as we get ready to crank into high gear for the election season. This is post-primary, and so now this is where the rubber is going to meet the road, my friends. This is where you're going to see all kinds of stuff break loose. And between now and November, it is going to be busy. That's right. This is where people are going to get excited. And now that the primary is behind us, the gloves are going to come off and things are really going to get started. So welcome to election season 2024. And this is where we get to go and do our thing. It's going to be it's going to be amazing. Joining us today in just a moment or two is going to be Representative Mike Cronk, who is now running for the Senate in the seat vacated by Click Bishop. He's going to be joining us, and we're going to have a conversation with him. So I guess we're going to be doing this by telephone. So I guess I had sent it anyway. I thought we were going to do a video link, but I just got the call that he's only going to be able to do it by phone because apparently he's still driving. So we'll get that set up here in just a hot second and get things going on. But we're going to talk with Mike Mike Cronk, and we'll get things ready to rock and roll and talk with him about the race, about the big hot topics for last session, and the things that he thinks are going to continue to be important with us in this upcoming session as well. What is facing the future of Alaska, and how is it going to? How much is it going to hurt? How much is it going to hurt? We're going to talk to Mike Cronk about that here in just a hot second, and then in hour two, we're going to go over the preliminary election results. With a 15.9% voter turnout as of now. Now that's only 96% of the precincts reporting in, and those are most of the biggies. The little dribs and drabs, 387 out of 403 precincts reporting in. So we got almost all of them in, but it's a 16% turnout, which is not horrible, but not great. I mean, it's in there. I'll give you the good news before we jump over to Mike here. So we'll the good news, so you don't, you're not on pins and needles, is that of the Republicans in the U.S. House race, Nick Begich came out on top by about 7 points. Nick Begich at 26.98%, Nancy Dahlstrom at 20.1%. Now, the bad news in that race is that Mary Peltola came in at 50%. So even the combined totals of Nick and Nancy still does not quite reach it, but that's okay. It's a primary. And we know that the full might of the electorate will get out in the general. So the question then remains, what's going to happen between Nick and Nancy between now and then? Will Nancy do what Nick had pledged, which was to get out of the race if he didn't win amongst the Republicans on the Republican side of the ballot? Time will tell. We'll see what happens from there. So before we go any further, though, let's jump on over to the phones and get our guest interview in for this morning. Mike Cronk joining us this morning from the road in Fairbanks, apparently, and we'll chat with him right now. Good morning, Mike. How are you?
I'm great, Michael. How about yourself?
Not too bad. Want to say thanks for coming on board and joining us. We appreciate it. So, Mike, we're looking at, I was just going over the election results first thing this morning. I went to bed before the results started pouring in last night. And so it was, one of those things you anticipate like a kid on Christmas when you're in a position like me. That's the present is the election results in the morning. And Senate District R comes out with all precincts reporting in and a 22% voter turnout. You're in the lead right now, but not by much. So you want to talk about that quick before we jump into the rest of it?
You bet. Yeah. I think I fell asleep about 10:45 last night. So I woke up this morning and I was like, okay, I felt good last night, even going to bed. So, again, it's a primary, but we still got a lot of work to do, but it was a good showing. So I was real happy when I woke up this morning and saw, about the 25 texts this morning, saying, hey, we're in the lead. So it was great.
Yeah, no, it's right now you're ahead by only about just over half a percentage point. So it's not a decisive lead at this point, but I don't think anybody really ever expects that right out of our primary because again, people, it's more of a bellwether for anything else, especially with the whole ranked choice voting situation. But this is where the rubber kind of meets the road from here on in, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the work's not done, obviously, but again, you always kind of run a race expecting to, not be in the lead. It keeps you working. So it was a good result. We spent 2 days up here in Fairbanks sign waving, and like I said, we still have a lot of work to do, and we'll get after it.
All right. Well, Mike, let's talk a little bit here about the big issues. The big issues that we're facing, the Senate and the House and the whole legislature this last cycle. And the biggest issues seem to all be floating around the idea that education is, underfunded, I guess they would say, flat funded. In fact, one of the articles in the paper yesterday said that we'd been defunding education because we hadn't been giving them all the money that they wanted a ton of money. And because we weren't giving it to them, we were essentially defunding we lost Mike's call there. This is why we do things via video these days. Let's see if we can, here we go. See if we can get him back on. Are you with me, Mike?
Yeah, sorry, Michael. My phone just disconnected.
Just disconnected.
I'm back.
So I guess what I was saying is the education and the the news media seem to be parroting the same kind of idea that somehow, some way, because we weren't giving them everything that we wanted, even though we were spending millions of dollars over the BSA, even though they got a slight increase, it still wasn't enough that kids were never going to make it and yada yada yada. Give me your thoughts on the whole education debate that happened this last session, and your thoughts over the mechanisms of it, and is it the solution that we're looking for?
Well, yeah, thanks. Obviously, that's a hard debate. I mean, we spent a lot of time on that. It took over the Capitol more than the PFD did, actually, which was really interesting. But I taught for 25 years, and I served as a regional school board member for Alaska Gateway School District for a couple of years. So I think I kind of have a good understanding of what's going on. And this is Mike. It's all union driven. And I don't mean to down downplay the members of the union, because there's a lot of teachers and support staff that are NEA members. It's the whole entity as itself. It's in education industry basically, and they honestly, we get them down in my office. Well, they don't they rarely come in my office anymore, but they don't talk about kids. It has nothing to do with kids or teachers. It's about more money. And some people ask about that. I said throwing more or spending more money. I hate throwing. Spending more money doesn't solve it. And I'll be the voice out there that says what needs to be said. A majority of our superintendents do not support the NEA. They know that is their problem, right? So I'll go out and say that. Go on a limb and say that they know the NEA is a problem. But how do you buck that trend, right? How do you fight that industrial machine
Right.
that just keeps churning,
Well,
coming down? Hey, we need more money. We need more money.
yeah, no, it's interesting that you say that, because the message that's been parroted on the floor by politicians in articles, by the newspapers, is that it's all about the children. I mean, I agree with you, Mike, that the big push behind this is more money, and really more money for the unions. It's not really about the kids, because if anybody who understands how the BSA works knows that this really is more about infrastructure and taking care of overhead than it is about money actually reaching the classroom. But the story that's been out there, and the what the narrative is that that this is about the children. Oh, the poor children, they're all gonna, they'll all be illiterate, and I mean, well, yeah, they already are. Why aren't we looking at the results now? Is more money going to fix that? But that's the narrative that we're hearing right now, and that's what average Alaskans are hearing.
Correct. And the thing is, here's my deal. This is why it's not about the money for the it is about the money. When has NEA came out with any kind of changes to improve student outcomes? They've never done it. It's never happened, because they don't really honestly care about it. They care about just getting the money. Hey, and all the teachers out there, support staff, I'm behind you 100%. I was a teacher. I want to pay you more money, but I want to make sure the money gets to you and the kids at the same time. And it's really funny. You get attacked for all these things. I'm probably one of the few people that have been in both sides of teaching and being on the school board, so I kind of seen everything. And it's like we have to figure out a better way. Again, we have a lot of school districts out there. Can we do better? Can we pull insurance? Can we make sure we're not spending more money outside the students? Absolutely, we should be able to work towards that. But they don't want to work towards that. It doesn't matter. It's all about the money.
And of course, we know that there used to be a mandate that 70% of the money in the BSA made it into the classroom, and now it's late. But even that's kind of a semi-fictitious number. I mean, I think you nailed it right at the beginning, Mike, when you said essentially this is about the unions, union power, creating more jobs, more overhead. I mean, we've talked about I got chastised by Elise Galvin last time she was on the program that my numbers were just so wrong, and that I shouldn't believe everything I see and read when I was talking about the number of administrators versus teachers increasing over the course of years. And look, I'm not an idiot. I can read a simple chart and understand where the thing is. We're seeing more overhead, more administrators versus the teachers, over the last 25 or 30 years. I mean, that's part of the problem. You've worked in the districts, you've worked in the systems. You've seen the duplication of effort in the variety of having, 53, 54 different school districts. You've seen the increase in the administrative, overhead and function, and the number of administrators in the schools compared to actual educators. I mean, this is a problem, is it not?
I think in more urban areas, absolutely it is. I don't want to speak for them because I don't totally understand what they do, but I know what happened in rural Alaska. And obviously, your school is always the focus of your community or village. I mean, it really is. It's where everything happens, whether it's basketball games or other events. And it is a job driver for the communities, but they're not out there just spending money on 8 principals and more superintendents. They try to focus their funding on positions that if you had an assistant superintendent, they would not only just be assistant superintendent, but they could be acting principal, they could be grant writer. So it's not and again, I think it's if you look at the majority of the money that was coming out of education, the majority of the money really does go to the urban schools, if you look, percentage wise. So, I agree with you.
Well, that's because they have the lion's share of students. So percentage-wise, they also have the largest number of students. So that would make sense. If the majority of the money is going to the urban areas, that's because where more of the kids are. So I mean that's not too that's not too hard to understand. We're going to continue this discussion, but we're up against the break here, so we're going to take the first break, and we'll be back here in just a minute. Mike Cronk is our guest, candidate for Senate District R. We're going to proceed ahead here. We'll be right back. More conversations with him in a moment. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Back with more after this.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
All right, we're in the break right now. We've Mike Cronk as our guest. If you have any questions for Mike, now's the time to ask him during the break, and we'll change gears a little bit here so we don't repeat ourselves in the on the radio, so to speak. Let me go over here. Harold says, don't look to the formula as the lever to improve education, especially the BSA. Well, I agree, Harold. I think they're gaslighting us on that. I really do. I think that's really a red herring for just, again, more money. Pushing up the BSA increases overhead in the classroom. And Harold and I agree on all this stuff this morning, which is unusual since Harold and I usually disagree on a bunch of stuff. Alaska has a bad case of EID, the Educational Industrial Complex. And I've been saying that for years, Mike. I mean, you just came out and said it. The problem is the unions. And look, unions have their place in certain things, and I get that. But when it moves away from the core focus, and as you said, they come in and they don't talk about the children. They don't talk about the educational future. They talk about the money for their members or money for their organization or whatever. They've lost sight of the goal at that point.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. I'm supportive of our support staff and teachers, and administrators, but where's the goal? We are all here to, and I think I said it before, like, I don't think any teacher wakes up and comes to school and says, yeah, I'm going to do a really crappy job at teaching kids today. It's a lot of what, when teachers left when I worked, it was the environment. It was your administration that made them leave. Because we were a fairly well-paid school district, and we still are. Is it enough? No, not in my estimation, but they left because of administration and just a bad environment. And the sad fact is more people aren't coming to be teachers. It's not happening. That's the reality, but nobody wants to talk about that kind of stuff. And what's interesting, I mean, in Fairbanks, I was reading the articles about the 4 school board members that are running. And, we obviously, we caught all the heck and the rhetoric this last session about, we just need more money. Now all 4 of them have said that, yeah, we probably should close schools. Oh, okay. But now it's okay after you crucified every Republican that didn't override the governor's veto. It's okay to come out and say that, right? And I'm like, come on. My biggest thing is honesty, and if you can't be straight up honest with people, that's where I draw the line in the sand. So that it's really sad that they're, oh yeah, that's the reality of it. I look at it this way. They asked for a 14, 13 BSA, and I went to some of my rural places and I was like, you know what that is? That's over 600 of your PFD dollars. Because that's where it's coming from. And the Democrats said it on, they don't care. We want $2,000. Well, there's the entire PFD. It's gone. Right. And the rural people are like, well, no, whoa. I was like, okay, let's play, let's match these these numbers up, and that's what's going to happen. So.
Well, right. And like you said, I mean, now they're acknowledging that they need to close schools. I mean, this is a simple math problem, right? I mean, you have
Correct.
fewer students. This is not just a function of we're not giving you enough money. The problem is that you are having fewer students, and you couple that with the fact that your scholastic achievement is not great. You're producing a product, and you're producing a product that's not great. When 1 in 4, if you were producing a product that had a 1 in 4 failure rate, I mean, you got issues. You know what I mean? And even if the remaining 3/4 are subpar and need to be sent back to the shop for more work, and I'm talking about kids having to go get remedial math just to take a 100-level college course, that's a problem. And so if you're producing a substandard product and you have fewer students, why would you not expect there to be pushback on it?
You're right. And it comes down. I mean, they're really trying to force every kid to be in a public classroom. I mean, I'm not listening to all the talk out there. With per se the left side of the spectrum here, where these homeschool kids, and I was just talking to one of the superintendents the other day. It's like, do they realize how much money we actually save the state by actually having correspondence homeschool? And I was like, no, they don't. They don't care. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Them, and I've told parents, I'm all about school choice.
Right.
Your choice, your kids. You do what you need to do.
Well, it's a loss of control. That's the problem. The major problem here is that they're losing control, and that's what terrifies them. All right, hold on the line, Mike. We're about to rejoin the radio. When you hear that, when we're talking, that means we're jumping back in. Here we go, the Michael Duke Show.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
We're continuing now with Mike Cronk, candidate for Senate District R. Mike was part of the debate. He's currently a state representative, and he's currently part of the debate for this last go round on schools and everything else. Mike, before we move on to other topics, I give you final thoughts here on the school situation. Is there a magic number? I mean, is there a magic number in the BSA, or is there some accountability measures that can be locked in to help people and to help the students do better? Because again, we're still 48th, 49th, 46th on various things out of 50, yet we spend more than almost any other district. We're in the top 3 or 5 districts as far as student spend. So, and I know we're a big state geographically, I've heard all the arguments and everything else, but we're still down in the bottom. Is there a magic number or a magic bullet to fix this? What is it, especially as a former educator and, former school board member, what in your mind is the fix for this? So give us your final thoughts before we move on.
I don't know if there's a magic fix, Michael. Because I do believe you have a disparity of how things are spent in urban Alaska, rural Alaska. I personally would love to see an urban funding system and a rural funding system. But we can do so much stuff outside the BSA, like target funding. And that's why I've been telling people. I had a guy stop along my waving signs. He goes, "I can't vote for you because you didn't override the governor's veto." I said, "The money wouldn't have got to the kids." And so I think we can do things like target funding. I know in our rural school districts, the insurance costs that went off the charts, high energy costs, we can actually fund that outside the BSA. This was what's interesting. We had lots of school districts, and there's school districts from urban Alaska came into my office this year, and they were like, "Well, what do you think we'll get for a BSA?" And I said, "You know what? I think $400 would be a great BSA." They're like, "Oh, great. That'll work so great." But then all of a sudden, no, it's devastation. We can't do that. Those were school board members that they were thrilled to death with a $400 BSA. So things aren't adding up here. What the public's being told and what's actually being, really being needed, doesn't add up. This is just a lot of rhetoric out there. I mean, hey, you can come out and look at the NEA endorsement list. There's not a single Republican on the list. It makes you go, So I don't think there's a magic number. I think we need to do much better with, not switching curriculum. I saw some of the new math, and I was like, this no wonder kids aren't learning.
Right,
I was shocked.
Right.
I was like, all you did was confuse those kids. It is literally 5 + 5 is 10, not 5. plus, break it down, or if it was 10 plus 10, we're going to break 10 down to 5, and it was absurd. We have no memory, memory skills here. We're not teaching phonics anymore. We need to get back to basics is really what we need to do. I mean, as part of kind of getting our achievement scores up.
Right.
But again, we'll flip curriculum every 3 years at millions of dollars to every school district because we can. There's a lot of things out there, Michael, and we just have to sit down. I've asked people, let's all sit down together, let's powwow, and let's start working on the areas where we can work on. But again, the desire is really not there because we just want more money.
Mike Cronk is our guest candidate for Senate District R. Mike, what are the other big issues that came up? Of course, we started talking about, South Central gas and how that affects the rail belt. Now, your community and your district is much more rural than that, but there is still some knock-on effects to some of that stuff. What are your thoughts on this current situation for oil and gas development down in the Cook Inlet? And the effect on the rail belt, the intertie, and then, of course, how does that translate out to the more rural districts? Obviously, you represent part of Fairbanks as well, but, what does that mean for the larger? Because District R is like the largest state Senate district in the country. It's bigger than some states. So how does that how does that translate out to your rural constituents? And, what is a solution there in your mind?
Mike, I do represent 36. It's the biggest, district in Alaska, probably the world. But I've always put Alaska first. I'm not a district guy first. I always look at what's good for Alaska. It's just good for Alaska, right? The rail belt does affect me because our PCE is based off the rail belt, right? So, the lower that rail belt rate is, the more, we will have for the PCE, to help alleviate some of our extreme high costs. I thought we have some really good, proposals. And one of the things that we, wanted was some royalty relief in Cook Inlet. And believe it or not, it was the Anchorage people that were against it. And I'm like, I'm just some guy up in Tok, representing this big rural district, and I want to help you, Anchorage. I would love to help you with some royalty relief to get those companies out there doing it. And they, no, we need the money. It was really frustrating because I do believe, I would hope that it was only royalty relief for Cook Inlet, not, anywhere else. And I would hope that would have helped some of these companies. And, I know they're out, I know Hill Cover Drilling. We've, talked to them once in a while, but we do have a problem. And then you hear the other side where, hey, let's shut down the hydro dam there at Cluda and stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, where are we going here?
Right.
Well, and in Fairbanks, we're pushing to get stuff, and I'm like, okay, whether you oppose, Kinross Mine or Pogo Mine, I'm like, let's shut down Kinross today. Your kilowatt hour is going to go, 14 more cents an hour. You'll be at 40 cents a kilowatt when that mine shuts down. So all these things play into each other, right? So
right. It's all connected. I mean, absolutely, it's all connected. I guess my question is, because I'll be honest with you, Mike, I'm not a fan of the royalty relief plan, simply because my question then becomes, who pays? Who pays for all this? At this point, we know that royalty relief means less revenue, which means that something else doesn't get paid, which means where's that money going to come from? Well, it's going to come from the PFD because that's the biggest, easiest pot of money to grab from, which means that the lowest income earners will be the most disproportionately affected. And in a lot of cases, the people who can least afford it. I mean, I'm all for burning Alaska gas, but if it doesn't make sense financially, maybe we should be exploring the other options of importing and everything else until the economics of it work out. And again, I'm not convinced 100% that there isn't a bit of gamesmanship or showmanship going on in this discussion of a gas crisis, because sometimes that pressure allows them to push the legislature to do things like give us more free money, give us more credits, give us more royalty relief so that we can do the things and not have to pay the full bill, whereas Alaskans are going to be hung with it. I mean, yeah, sure, it means that the electricity costs may go down, but we're still paying for it just in another way.
Yeah, I understand. I hear where you're coming from, Mike, and I don't totally disagree with you, but I don't have the numbers, but I would love to know how much royalties do we really get from the Cook Inlet natural gas, and so I mean, yeah, you could say that we'll take it from somewhere else, but I just always wondered, and like I said, I don't have the numbers for it. I don't think it's a huge amount of money, but I've always said this because I stood with the governor on this because we're looking at different things. I said sometimes the benefit to Alaskans isn't about money coming back. It's what's being produced and how it's being used in Alaska. So if that actually benefits Alaskans, which it would, a majority of Alaskans, I think that's good for Alaska. Yes, we don't have the revenue, but it's still good for Alaska. So I think you have, for me, I'm trying to look at the biggest picture. Like it's not all about the money. It's like, how does it benefit Alaska? And I think once we start importing, we'll lose all interest in any other sort of, projects or things that could pencil out later on. And I know we can all agree to disagree on that, but I want to make sure we're using Alaska resources first and foremost. So I guess that would be my stance, even though I hear what you're saying.
Right. Well, no, I mean, I'm all for using Alaska resources, Mike, but it also has to make financial sense. If it costs us twice what it, to produce or to use something locally that we can get from somewhere else, I'm all for the pride of ownership of using Alaskan resources. But if it's twice as expensive, then it makes it uneconomical for people to stick around and do that. I mean, that's how we've lost a lot of our food generation in the state of Alaska, is because it was twice as expensive to produce the same food that we could import. Now that comes with its own problems, obviously, as far as food stability and security and some other things, but it's the more convenient of the options right now, and it will keep more people in the state because they can afford to live here. So there is a balance act there, but we can't ever forget, how these things are being paid for, who pays for them in the long run.
Correct. I don't disagree with you, but I do have to. I tend to look at the bigger picture down the road, and let's just say that I'm not crazy about the gas pipeline all the way down in Kiski, but I sure am more interested in the pipeline to Fairbanks because I've talked to numerous people that are, CEOs of different companies, and they were like, that is really the only project that truly pencils out. That natural gas is abundant across the world. Where it's not like it's oil, where we're going to be making, billions of dollars off of it. But again, I guess we have to look at the bigger picture. How does building our own pipeline impact future people coming up here for industry or anything like that? I mean, if we have super cheap gas and eventually get really low energy, we're going to have people come up here to build industry. So I know what you're saying, but we also have to have that vision of how do we get people up here. Yeah, that might have cost us money here, but in the long run, it's going to bring industry and jobs and prosperity for Alaska down the road. Maybe I don't see it in my lifetime, Michael, and I'm okay with that because that's what I'm all about. I want to make sure we're setting up the state for our kids and grandkids. And so I don't have to see that prosperity now, but maybe that's for that prosperity for the next 10, 50 years down the road. And we have to have that vision because, as well as I do, we spent a lot of money and we really didn't produce a whole lot. But a lot of billions of dollars are gone.
Do you
Where's
think
the infrastructure?
Right. I mean, do you think the state should be picking up the ball on that and leading the way and spending money to build a pipeline either to Fairbanks or a bullet line all the way down? I mean, do you think that the state should be the one to lead the way on that, or should private industry be the driver on that?
I would much rather see private industry, to be honest. Government is pretty much an epic failure at whatever it does, to be honest with you. But would we have to do an investment into it? I'm okay with some sort of investment, but I would much rather have private industry doing it to make sure that, the state, Mike, what have we done, effectively as a state that's really penciled out? I'd probably say not a whole lot. So government really isn't the right avenue for it.
What you're saying is government is not the answer to all of our problems, Mike. Come on,
I will say that.
Let's get with the narrative here. You're missing the whole point. It's supposed to be the answer to all of our problems. All right, we'll hold the line here. Mike Cronk is our guest. We're going to continue the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We got one final segment with Mike coming up next. We're going to talk a little bit about the permanent fund. We're going to talk about the defined benefits, and we'll give Mike a chance to finish up and give us his elevator pitch, etc. We'll continue in just a moment. You're home for common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio, The Michael Duke Show. Back with more and Mike Cronk right after this.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, we're continuing now. Mike Cronk is our guest. The problem is this is my personal philosophy and belief on this, Mike, and I'll let you respond to it. But, my problem is I think we get this so emotionally invested in making sure that Alaskan stuff gets used first no matter what. I saw so much pushback on the idea that we might need to import gas, even in the short term. And by short term, I mean like a 10-year window. Even in the short term, they seem to be acting like, oh, we couldn't, Alaska's, no matter what it costs, we should get Alaskan gas in here. Yeah, I mean, we got 17 trillion cubic feet of gas on the North Slope. Sure would be nice to get it into our homes, but does it economically pencil out? And as you point out, government has never done well with, anything that it's any project that it's taken on. And then, of course, the question again always becomes who pays. And we're already, seeing this submarining of the PFD and everything else. And I think that's part of the problem is that we just keep looking and having this emotional tie to doing everything. Sometimes the math just doesn't work out and we need to wait till the time is right to do it. The problem is many of these projects have very long tails. It takes 15 years, 10 years, 15 years, sometimes 20 years to develop these things. But you've got to wait for the economics to work for it to really be viable or feasible without, using a tremendous amount of public dollars.
Yeah. No, I mean, Mike, you're right. I mean, it is, but I just see, we've talked about this a lot. I just saw the import part of this is once they import, there will never be a desire to build the infrastructure for the, a gas pipeline. And I believe that even after it pencils out, I just see that. And that is, for me, for the future of Alaska, that's where my hang up is. I understand the points, economics and stuff. I listen to Brad, every Tuesday, and, we listen to that, but we have to have a vision for down the road. Like I said, for when we're not here anymore. And I don't think, personally, this is my personal opinion, I don't think the import is the way to go, but I don't live in, people have the ability to heat their homes and we'll have, power generation also.
No, I agree with that. Mike, what is the big issue that you think is, what do you think is going to be the big issue that returns in this next upcoming session? What do you think is going to be the hot topic du jour as this next session starts?
I would say, obviously, education is going to be right there at the top. Energy will also be there. It seems the PFD has just faded to the side because, honestly, I know you listen to Fourth Session. If caucuses are controlled by the more left side of the spectrum, there's really they've blatantly said it. Yeah, we just have to spend your PFD. Free range, dry hard. Obviously. So I would say those two would still be the hot topics, even though I think the education part is a lot simpler than people think to solve. It's just getting that one group out of the way, or I know I'll say it just because I'm not afraid of saying what needs to say. The governor had people in his office, say, hey, we'll sign this, we'll get you that BSA increase, with some of the stuff I need, and they absolutely said we don't want it. So this wasn't teachers, students saying, hey, we could use some more funding. This was the top down saying, nah, we're not giving you a win. This is all about tall man bad. They're not going to give Governor Dunleavy a win, no matter what. I mean, passing the Reads Act, it passed the Senate 20-0, and we passed it out of the House 21-19.
Right.
That is pure politics, right? I mean, they didn't want to give the big guy a victory, and it's really shameful because we're trying to do what's best for all kids, right? I mean, in the education spectrum, it's not just public school kids. All kids deserve a good education. And it's the parent's choice. I was a public school teacher. Two of my daughters went to Edgecombe for 4 years. It's a great school. It was a great opportunity. It saves kids' lives. Hey, that's an option. I want to make sure I'm supporting that option. So I'm just kind of open-minded about that kind of stuff.
All right, I'm looking at the let's see. Ruben says Mike put the time into Fairbanks and his race results show I think he's going to be fine if he keeps working even in the blue 35 precincts. So I guess good points there. Rick agrees with you on the projects that the state has taken on, that the state's never done well. He says, good point. Point Mac, the dairy, the Delta Barley Farm project, the grain bins they bought in Seward. I'm thinking about the Matanuska made dairy where they were trying to keep it Alaskan. I mean, there's just never been a government project where they've taken on these things and it's really penciled out. That's the problem that I see in this whole thing, and it definitely is going to something we're going to have to be watching for. Okay, we're 12 seconds away from returning to the radio. Mike Cronk is our guest. The Michael Duke Show continues. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. Follow us on Rumble. Will you do that? Here we go.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
Oh, man, that's not true. I'm a nice guy. Everybody loves me. Nobody hates me. All right, let's go back over here. Mike Cronk is our guest candidate for Senate District R. Mike, of course, the big thing that has sucked up all the oxygen in the room up until this last session, it was education this last session. But prior to that, it was always the PFD. It was always the PFD. Ever since Governor Walker vetoed half the PFD out, and they've been retaining that and then now using it for government on a yearly basis, the PFD has been a big issue. I didn't see it being as big an issue in last election season. I think people are starting to get kind of inured to it. Unfortunately, they understand that the PFD is probably going to be gone. I've looked at the 10-year forecast. I mean, we got billion-dollar deficits going out here in a year or two. And there's really only one easy pot of money. There's no intention to cut anything in state government. There's no political will to do that amongst anybody in the legislature. And so the next thing is that they're going to try and spend down the PFD. What's your thoughts on the permanent fund dividend itself? Where should it be? Should it be set in formula? Should the payout be guaranteed in the Constitution like HJR 7? What is your thoughts on the solution for the PFD itself?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Yeah, great question. I'm a supporter of the PFD. Rural Alaska, and I'm not saying people in urban Alaska don't use it, right? I don't want to sound like I'm just a rural person because I'm not. I envision all of Alaska, but a lot of people use that. Prior to me being a legislator, I know exactly what I use that for. I only had a teacher retirement, so I know I put fuel in my tank and stuff. So I support it. I think, again, solving it with a complete fiscal plan, like what Ben was trying to do is what we really need. But again, you keep hitting, there's no will to do anything. Well, this is how we can always do it. And the writing's on the wall. I don't think we're trying to fool anybody that within 3 years, there'll be no PFD. And that's what's frustrating about it. But without a whole plan, how are we going to continue paying a PFD? Because it's just all the money that's coming out of the government is coming from that. We're not going to magically put 2 million barrels of oil back down the pipeline. I wish we could, but we're not going to. So
Right.
The reality of is, how are we going to solve it? I don't know the answer, Mike. I really don't. I mean, do we change statute? Do we agree to 50-50? Do we agree to 25-75? I think we have to have something in place so it's being followed. because again, you get the right group of people in the legislature on both sides, and I guarantee what our spending now is you're going to be like, oh my God, they just added another $1 billion to the budget overnight. There we go. I mean, they wanted to add $500 million to education. That $500 million, that's $800 a person. So
yeah, well, I mean, their goal was 1413, right? I mean, we're at 650. They wanted to go to 1413 in the BSA, and again, the question always becomes, and the question we try to ask on the show all the time is, who pays? At this point, it would be the lowest 80% of income earners would be the ones most disproportionately affected, because that's the PFD is a big chunk. Not to mention the fact that because there's a disconnect between the public and private economy in this state, because there's no the legislature doesn't care about the private economy. You know, legislators have actually said the government spend is the economy. That's what they care about. They don't care what happens to the private economy because they don't draw any of their revenue from the private economy. They draw all their revenue from the permanent fund and from oil, and that's it. As long as the oil sector's fine, they're it doesn't matter. We could all blow up and dry away tomorrow, and it wouldn't matter. So if they need to take the PFD, then they're going to be happy to do it. Now, the biggest danger is what we're seeing right now. The Permanent Fund Corporation put out that white paper. We've seen people like Bert Stedman and others talk about how, well, now we need to combine the earnings reserve and the corpus, because we just may have a time because there's not enough spendable money in the earnings reserve, which has to do with accounting voodoo and some gimmickry and everything else. There is money in there, not to mention the fact that the legislature has put $8 billion from the earnings reserve into the corpus over the last couple of years, supposedly to future inflation proof it. But now we seem to have forgotten that was the purpose of it. So now they're telling us that, we need this money to inflation proof and we don't have enough to spend. So now we need to combine the earnings reserve and the corpus, essentially opening up the corpus to appropriations from the legislature. Is that something you support?
No, I don't. We better keep some sort of constraint on that, and that would, again, you just hit it on the head. That would open it up. So no, I wouldn't support that at this time. That just seems pretty much like fool's game to me. That's the end of the permanent fund. That's pretty much the end of any sort of having anything to do with the permanent fund. And that would just open up more spending, obviously. So
yeah, well, I mean,
I totally agree with you.
They've drained down every account that they had access to, right? It started with the CBR, that emptied out, or the SBR. Then we went to the CBR. Then we found up then we cut the PFD. I mean, we've spent billions of dollars in this state over the last decade that, we have no way of repaying right now. And we're eventually reaching the end of the road to where there are no more pots of money available, except for the permanent fund corpus itself, which has been out of reach because of that constitutional mandate, that bar on it. And now they're talking about, we need to crack open the piggy bank. We need to strangle the golden goose that's laying the egg every year because we need the meat. I mean, that's what they're talking about.
Yeah, right. And I've listened to you talk about it. It's like that's where our, you call it the seed corn. That's where we're using it to make money, right? So the more you take out of it, the less money you're going to get, and then you're just going to see that corpus just shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink over time. And I can't predict how many years that will be, but no, you're totally right. That would be the ultimate end. Pretty much anything, and then any interest of actually solving fiscal problems. Again, once you have the money, why would you put any effort into solving and coming? It's the easy way out, and that's what we're always taking, the easy way out, not the hard, sitting down and working hard and figuring it out. So you're right. I mean, that's exactly what would happen.
Well,
the writing's on the wall there.
Right.
I mean, it's easy.
We talked about political will. There is no political will to cut because there's money available. The only way to create the political will is to starve the beast. We've got to squeeze down the revenue side hard enough that they have to start actually looking at what are we providing and what's mandated and what are we doing. Because they have open free access to all this money and they can tap it at any time. That's the easy road. That's the easy button. Oh, take the PFD, the PFD, and then once that's gone, then we're going to be faced with hard choices.
Yeah, that's the scary part, Michael. is once that's gone, then what do we? You can't tax us into prosperity. Not in this day. We only have 750,000 people. I mean, people will leave in droves because no one will be able to afford to live here, and that's we're I don't want to say everybody, but it's so short-sighted, right? And I tell people all the time, it's like, where's our vision for 10 years, 20 years, 50 years down the road? We're just looking at today and tomorrow. Hey, we can spend this right now. This is what we need. Well, maybe we don't quite need it, right? I mean, but man, getting people to realize that is a really tough thing to do down there, because hey, you look great when you go back and say, hey, we did this and this. I would love to vote yes on everything. I mean, there was issues that are very dear to me, just like anybody else, but there's got to be an adult in the room that says, no, this is how much we spent. We're not adding any more to it. And that's a very tough thing to do, because, as an incumbent, you get attacked on anything left and right about that. But I always just say, and, you're trying to hold the course and trying to do what's best for Alaska. That's got to be our baseline. And it's not just continue spending and spending and spending. Right. I mean, at least Galvin said on the floor, there was no limit. We need a $2,000 BSA increase.
Right.
Oh,
who pays? Again, the question that we ask around here all the time is, who pays? Who pays for that? Oh. Obviously, not the people who are, not the big industries, not the high earners. They take it as a fraction of their income versus the people who depend on that PFD to put heating oil in the tank, et cetera, et cetera. Mike, we're down to the last 90 seconds here, so I want to give you the floor. Your elevator pitch, how do folks find out about you? What can they do to help the campaign? Give it to us here.
All right. Well, I'll start before I forget. So, get a hold of me. You can go to my website. It's Cronk for Alaska. It's all spelled out. It's not a number for, .com. Reach out, please. Obviously we'll be doing some fundraisers. Funding obviously is key to every campaign out there. Not just mine. We have some house races that, if you start looking at the funding, it's pretty minimal, right? So, get out and fund your candidates. $20 is, somebody gives me 1,000, somebody gives me 20. I treat it exactly the same. I mean, because maybe that $20 is a really tough pull for them to even give you $20. So it's very appreciative, but get out there and do that. I guess my pitch for me is, I try to do my best to be common sense Alaskan, and again, have a vision for Alaska. And somebody brought up, you talked about all the projects that the government has built, and we didn't have a vision on any of those projects. Delta Barley Field, let's do a Delta Barley Field, but there's no infrastructure for it. We didn't build the railroad to it. Or at Fort Mac, we didn't connect the railroad to it. We have the money. It was a great idea. People get excited about it, but we never finished anything.
Right.
And a lot of our projects are the same.
The follow through. Yeah, the follow through is what's horrible. Yeah, Mike, we're out of time. Please hold the line for me for a second. We'll talk to you off the air. Folks, we got more coming up. Hour 2 is dead ahead. It's election results and analysis. You'll have my thoughts on that on the other side. Thank you, Mike Cronk. The Michael Duke Show continues right after this. Mike, I mean, you're not wrong. The problem is the state just doesn't have follow through. I mean, first of all, they don't have any business acumen, right? Because they can't, to them, there's no profit and loss in anything else. It's a project. It's what they get paid to do. I mean, cost plus works for them, yada, yada, yada. There's all kinds of problems having government get involved in private sector things that they shouldn't be involved in. You want to have a loan bank, that's one thing. You want to actually have the state take the lead on something, that's something completely different. And I think that's part of the problem. You said something earlier that really resonated with me, because I think you seem to understand it. You mentioned earlier when we were talking about education and teachers leaving that you said it was more about the leadership. It was more about the culture. I'm not using the same words that you are, but basically what you were saying is people leave those positions not because of pay, but because of the environment and the culture and the leadership in their positions. But all we're hearing from the opposition, and it didn't make it really out, it made it out of the Senate, but it didn't go anywhere in the House this time around, was this discussion on defined benefits, that was the way that we could fix Alaska's shortages for fill in the blanks, teachers, troopers, firefighters, dishwashers. I mean, everything is if we had defined benefits. The problem is, of course, is that we still owe roughly $7 billion to the previous of unfunded liability to the previous tiers of defined benefits. And now they can say, oh no, we're going to save money. It's not going to cost us anything. Even though the Reason Foundation says it'll cost $10 billion over 14 years, they say this will actually save us money. What are your thoughts on the defined benefits? Is that's what's needed as a teacher, as a former teacher? Is that's what's needed to keep people in there? Or is there some fundamental changes somewhere else that need to happen on that?
I don't think so, Mike. I mean, I wish we could pay everybody defined benefits, but we looked at the numbers. I mean, the reason they ended it, we were $15 billion in debt. The state made its payments, and then it added another $8 billion, and we're still $7.5 billion in debt. And everybody came in. We need defined benefits. I said, at the cost to who? I said, even if it was adding another $1 billion of the deficit, you're adding that to the cost of all 750,000 residents of Alaska. And it's the first call on all monies. It's the first call before the budget. I don't believe so. I don't believe we have people like myself. My dad retired twice from the federal government, Air Force and FAA, and then had an IBEW retirement. I don't believe we have that anymore. I believe people aren't going to stick in their jobs for 20 years, 25 years. They're more flexible, and they get bored, and they're going to go do something else. And that's where I do think the 401k. Can we up the ante for that? Absolutely. But I don't think that is. It's the environment that people are in. I know people teach all over Alaska, and where they're teaching, they love it. Their administration supports them. And that's what's going to keep people around, is having a great environment to work in. I'll be the first to admit I've been in a lot of bad environments, but I live there. I'll put up with it because that person's not going to be there forever. I'll last them. But when there's new people coming in as teachers, which a majority of our teachers aren't from Alaska, they're like, I'm not putting up with this. I can leave. So, and
Right,
again, I would love
right.
to pay. And I told the people in defined benefit, you find a defined benefits that doesn't add debt to us, I'll be the first to support it. But if it's going to add, $1 billion here, 10 billion, I can't do that. Somebody has to be the adult in the room fiscally,
Right.
to be fiscally
Well,
responsible.
why
So
shouldn't we be
that's
talking
my
about,
stance.
why shouldn't we be, if the defined contribution is not cutting it, and the Reason Foundation even made recommendations that we could increase the defined contributions to make it match, what some other communities and other municipalities are doing. Why wouldn't we do that? Why wouldn't we look to improve the one we have instead of creating a whole new problem for ourselves?
I totally agree, Mike. I really do agree, and I think that's the way to go. But again, we're ingrained in doing everything this the way it's always been. I've been there for 4 years, right? And I refuse to become a politician, and that's the most frustrating thing. Well, this way we've always done it, but hurry up and slow down. That's government. No, I want to hurry up and speed up. I want to get stuff done. So it's the same argument over and over, of this is how we've always done it. This is what
Right,
we need to do.
right.
We're a small state. We have a limited amount of people. You can't tax us enough to make up some of these deficits. You know where it's coming from. We all know where it's coming from when we start adding this kind of debt to the people of Alaska. There's only one bank account that it's coming from.
Right. Mike, I want to give you the final bite at the apple here. I got less than 2 minutes, but I'll give you the final bite at the apple. You, any final thoughts, the things we didn't hit on, or anything else?
No, Mike, I think pretty much, my thing is, straight up honesty. And I think what's really frustrating for me in politics, since I have, on the radio here with you, is not being honest with voters. We got people running as independents, undeclareds. Yeah, all they do is they sit in Democrat booths. They go to Democrat fundraisers. Okay, guys, just you're a Democrat. Just call. And whether it's if a Republican's doing the same thing, stop. Just be a Republican, right? And I'll be proud of it. I told you I don't know, Sleazy. I'm a conservative Republican. I do my best. I actually vote for Alaska first and not party. But I think that's really the frustrating part is the genuine dishonesty at the beginning of anything, because you just tell people what you are. And so that's it. I don't have a closing pitch. I just say common sense to Alaskan, that gets out there and, represents all Alaskans. Like, again, I'm a rural rep, but I support urban Alaska equally, because you know what? We're all in this together. The better our state is, the better off all of us are going to be. So we have to make sure we're taking care of everybody as best as possible.
All right, Mike Cronk, our guest. Thank you so much, Mike, for coming on board. We look forward to talking to you again here in the near future, okay?
Anytime. Thanks, Michael.
Appreciate it. Thank you for coming on board and joining us. All right, folks, that does it for hour one. Hour two is it. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Welcome to hour two of this beautiful hump day. That's the Wednesday edition of the program. We appreciate you coming on board and joining us. We were hoping to try and get Nancy Dahlstrom on the program this morning right after the election, but we weren't able to. I wasn't able to make that. I wasn't able to make that run. So hopefully tomorrow, fingers crossed. I'm waiting on a reply for tomorrow to see if that will fix it. We'll see if tomorrow is the day that we get her on. I would love to have her on the program to talk about it. Specifically because we're now seeing the results of the primary election from yesterday. And that's what we're going to go over here this morning in hour two. We're going to go over the election results for the various districts and the various offices. And we're going to see what we can see. And I'm going to give you some of my kind of no holds barred analysis. Now, let me give you the Cliff Notes version right up front. So if you have to leave this morning and you're on your way to work or whatever, and you miss it, these election results show me one thing at this point, that ranked choice voting was designed primarily to benefit Democrats and progressives. Because we know on paper, as you noodle it out and you put, party A, the banana party, and party B, the grapefruit party, on paper, this seems like a great idea. But none of that takes into account the personal philosophies of the parties or the candidates or the people involved in these races. In a perfect world, ranked choice voting would work out, and it would, again, draw more from the middle, and it would do all the things that the people who are yes on ballot measure 2 people, it would do all the things that they say that it does. But in execution, in practice, the difference between theoretical and reality is that people who are more progressive, who are more on the Democratic side or the left side of the spectrum, whatever label you want to put on them, are generally speaking, they are more communal in nature. They are more get together, work, it takes a village. They're willing to suborn in some ways their own personal kind of, I guess, ambitions or whatever. They're willing to do it for the team. They are really let's all get together and give the world a Coke, right? They're all kind of, again, more communal in nature. Whereas people who are philosophically more on the right, more on the conservative, whether that's a constitutionalist or Republican or AIP member or anything else, we are more rugged individualists. I mean, we don't, I've often joked about it. I don't play well with others, right? I mean, I have a vision, I have a belief. I want to be left alone to do my own thing. And I want to have, I want to manifest my own destiny. I am the rugged individualist. You can't tell me what to do. That's the kind of the whole thing. And because we have these two different, very different philosophies, one thing that is abundantly clear in the results of yesterday's election. Now, remember, it's a primary election. It's a primary election in the second go-round of this ranked choice voting, which people are still confused about. I talked to some people yesterday at the polling location when I was casting my vote, and they're like, yeah, I still don't understand the thing. And again, not that if you take the time to look at it, it's that hard to understand, but most people, they just want to go vote and get it done. And they're not diving into the details of it. We've got people on this program yesterday were asking, so do I rank the red today? No. It was a pick one primary. It was a jungle primary. And then it goes to the, it's just very confusing. So these numbers, again, think of it as a straw poll. That's what you really have to look at this primary, especially the primary now with the ranked choice voting and a lot of the confusion that went on there. Think of it now as more of a straw poll than anything else. It's a bellwether for where things are going. We've talked about on this program how really there was only 3 races that were affected by the primary. Number one is the U.S. House race, the race for the congressional seat, right? That was the biggest race on the ticket, no matter which ticket you looked at. I mean, my ballot was essentially 2 boxes, one for the House race and then one for my local state representative. And I know some of you had state and state House representatives and state Senate representatives on yours. But literally, there was very little on this ballot. The most important thing on the ballot was the U.S. House race. Because out of the 50 state races that were up, because all 40 of the representatives are up for re-election seats, and half of the 20, that would be 10 seats from the Senate, are up for re-election. But of those 50 races, only 2 have more than 4 candidates. And because we're still under ranked choice voting, God help us, I hope we repeal it this November. It'll be on the ballot in November. But there was only 2 races that have more than 4 people. If any race in the state has 4 or less people in it, they're all going to the general election. And this specifically is how ranked choice voting is going to be detrimental to us. If we, and the we that I'm using right now is the conservatives the we who are on the more conservative side of the fence, if we don't come together and we don't have some conversations amongst ourselves about should we continue to run in races and run multiple Republicans in races, if we don't have that conversation, we're going to be in trouble. Now, first and foremost, the U.S. congressional race, the race for the U.S. House of Representatives. The results are in. And it's not surprising to me or anybody who really was just watching is that Mary Peltola came in first. Why? Because she's the only real Democratic candidate, known, funded, supported Democratic candidate out there. So Mary Peltola received 50.38% of the vote. So half the vote. The good news for those of us who have been watching this for a while and have been very concerned about the splintering and the suborning of the Republican Party is that Nick Begich came in second. Nick Begich came in second with 26.98% of the vote, almost 27% of the vote. And then Nancy Dahlstrom, who is the pick of the Good Old Boys Club, who is the pick of the Business as Usual Club from folks out there in Congress who don't want somebody down there who won't just follow orders. She came in third with 20% of the vote. Now, somebody earlier on in the program in the chat comments said, well, even if you combine the two, they can't beat Mary because that's 47% to 50%. Well, the thing is that now that we've done that, the 12 candidates will be narrowed down to 4. So a lot of those people are going to have to pick other candidates. Now, that doesn't mean that some of them won't vote for Peltola. Doesn't mean that some of them won't vote for Salisbury. Matthew Salisbury actually did better than we kept hearing the Vote Alaska Before Party is the name of the PAC, and they've been putting out ads banging on Gerald Hikas, right? That Gerald Hikas was the one that, it was Nick Begich, Nancy Dahlstrom, and Gerald Hikas. They're the ones you should not vote for. Well, Hikas didn't even, I don't know why they chose him out of the whole group. Matthew Salisbury actually received almost double what Hikas did, but Salisbury at 0.62% is the fourth candidate, right? So you got 50%, 27%, 20%, 0.62%, the fourth person in the race. So it'll be interesting. Now, again, remember, this is only with about 96% of the districts rolling in, and those are mostly urban. Mary will probably see a little bit of a bump as more of the rural area comes in. There's still 6,000 outstanding absentee ballots that have 10 days to arrive. So none of these numbers, again, are official. These are the unofficial results as of right now, according to the Division of Elections. But again, remembering that this really is nothing more than a straw poll at this point. We're just testing the waters, so to speak. But the question remains: Nick Begich had committed that he would drop out of the race if he did not come in number one on the Republican side of the ticket. Well, he came in number one on the Republican side of the ticket. Nancy Dahlstrom has danced around this. In some instances being reported, she said, absolutely not. We're in it to win it. In other instances, she said, oh, well, we'll sit down with the Republican leadership and party and talk about it. In one, apparently she was on Amy Demboski's show or something, and she said something about, we'll sit down with Nick and talk about it then. But then last night, according to the ADN, she basically doubled down on her intention. Begich has made the mention several times, and that was his intent in committing to dropping out if he didn't come in first. It was important for Republicans to unify behind a single candidate because he saw what happened last go-round when it was Palin and him versus Peltola. That splitting of the vote gave Mary Peltola the seat. But when asked about it yesterday, Nancy Dahlstrom doubled down, this is from the ADN, doubled down on her intention to remain in the race following Tuesday's early results, leaning heavily on endorsements from Donald Trump and U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson and Alaska Governor Mike Dunleavy. Quote, in a written statement, she said, from day one, this campaign has been about defeating Mary Peltola in November, unquote. Well, if you are really about defeating Mary Peltola, tell me again how remaining in the race will do that. I mean, this is simple mathematics. If you get two candidates who have come from similar backgrounds, represent a similar party ideals, come from the same party, and you've got a third candidate who is on the opposite side of all the issues, they're going to receive all the votes from everybody on that side of the fence. And then the two of you on your side of the fence will split the two. How is that? If your campaign is all about defeating Mary Peltola, why would you remain? Is it pride? Is it hubris? Is it a stick in the eye? Is it the outside people telling you what to do? This makes no sense. This makes absolutely no sense. Anybody who anybody who says that they uphold the party edicts, the ideals, that their whole thing is to defeat the incumbent Mary Peltola, in my mind, would do anything to prevent that from happening. Now, is this a game of chicken? She hopes that she stays in the race long enough that Nick will drop out because he has some honor and he really does want to see Mary Peltola gone. Is she waiting to see if he'll drop out and she'll get it anyway? I don't know. That's a dangerous game to play. It really is. The whole thing is problematic. All right, we're going to continue here in just a moment. We're going to talk about some of the other races and why my analysis shows that this ranked choice voting is only good for Democrats at this point. We'll continue the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay. This whole thing. This is Jennifer, and this is what I had heard previously. At the Republican convention this year, Nancy said she would sit down with the Republicans and discuss it. So, if she doesn't, that means she lied, right? If she doesn't sit down with the Republicans and discuss it, that means she lied. That this really isn't about getting Mary Peltola thrown out of office. That's the bottom. I mean, you can't paint it any other color at that point. If she says that she's going to sit down with the Republicans and discuss it, and then last night she says, we're in it to win it, we're not getting out. Well, guess what? She lied. She doesn't want to upset the Donald, says Chris. Who gives a crap about Donald Trump and his endorsement? I mean, maybe that's just me talking. But if I'm in a race and my real true thing is, so it's about pride at that point? It's about not offending the king? Screw that. Screw that. Yeah, his endorsement did so well last go around for Palin. I mean, that was great. David says she's not going to win the House race and she's not doing herself any favors if she's thinking about running for governor in 2026. I wouldn't pick her for governor. I mean, just her track record on this campaign alone of not going out and talking to people. I mean, it was only after I kind of talked badly about, I mean, not badly, but I just said, what has she done? What is she doing? What does she stand for? Nobody knows. Finally, her campaign reached out to me after I sent an email 10 weeks ago. And then every time I've tried to offer them a slot, it hasn't worked out. I mean, here's your slots. Here's your times. But you're right. She's not doing herself any favors as she's thinking for running for governor. I mean, what is it? What kind of leadership does, you want to run for governor? You make a speech where it says it's obvious that Nick Begich is the people's choice right now, and for the good of the state and for the good of, everything, I'm going to step down and focus on my duties now, but I'll be back. I mean, you could, she might be a hero at that point. But it's not going to happen. Nothing Nancy will not drop out. She's already served her purpose of throwing the elections against the insurgent candidate. That's true. I mean, I agree with that, Fat Ray. I agree. Absolutely agree. That this is the whole point. The whole point of bringing NPC Nancy in was to disrupt the momentum and to try and siphon stuff away from Nick Begich. That's it. Period. Peltola is trying to sell herself as a moderate so she can appeal to the middle. She's a lot of dollars. Yes, exactly. And that's what she did last time. That's exactly what she did last time. And that's what ranked choice voting allows them to do when there's only one single candidate in there for their party. They don't have to run on their own party principles or what they just appeal to the middle and draw them in. I'm just scrolling through some of the comments here. Scooter laughs. Scooter laughs every day at the Lynx party. Yeah, he does. Lynn says Nancy said I will win when she was on Picaro a couple days ago. Okay, well, good luck with that. Because you're not going to win. Neither one of you will win if you both remain in the race. That's the thing. Neither one of them is going to win if they both remain in the race. All right. Brian's got the COVID. Sorry, Brian. That sucks. All right, here we go. The Michael Dukes Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. Let's do it.
The Michael Dukes Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
He's so mean. All right, welcome back to the program, The Michael Dukes Show, Common Sense Radio. We are going over election results, and I am convinced, as I had said earlier, I am convinced that that ranked choice voting is working as intended, because we know the Democrats are very good about putting only one main candidate in almost every race. That they won't have two strong candidates. They may have one kind of throwaway candidate to say, oh, we've got two. But they will not have two strong candidates in a race. You won't see Al Gross and Mary Peltola go head-to-head. In fact, you saw Al Gross get out of the race last time around when that was going to happen, right? You saw that go on. You knew what was happening. That's because they don't want two candidates in a race. And then, of course, you got, but in every Republican race, they've always got Republicans of all shapes and sizes coming in there and fighting it out with each other. Some very strong candidates together. All right. So again, the race runs out for the U.S. House of Representatives. Nick Begich, again, coming in at 26.98%, almost 27%, beating Nancy Dahlstrom by 7 points, roughly. And then you got Mary Peltola, who's got 50% of the vote right now. Again, this is only with 96% of the location, 387 out of 403 precincts reporting in. And like I said, they've still got about 6,000 absentee ballots that are coming to be counted. So those are still going to be 10 days. And then I'm sure we've got ballots from the rural precincts that have got to be flown in and counted, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Overall, not a not a great turnout, but not a horrible turnout. It was a 16%, 15.94% turnout as of right now. Not a bad percentage. I mean, it's not great, but it was a primary. So the big question remains, will Nancy Dahlstrom drop out of the race? My money is on no. Even though she said she would discuss it and everything, her last words in a written statement yesterday was she is in it to win it. From day one, this campaign has been about defeating Mary Peltola in November. If she truly believed those words, she would drop out now. If that's what it was truly about, if it was truly about defeating Mary Peltola, she would drop out now so that there was only one strong candidate from each party in that race. That's what would happen. All right, let's start looking at some of the other races that went on out there. Of course, there was a lot of candidates that ran unopposed. Jesse Keel, obviously back in Senate District B. In Senate District D, which has been the much disputed case in race in the Kenai. And that is Jesse Bjorkman, the Republican incumbent, at 43.93%, but just 2 points behind him is Ben Carpenter at 41.23%. So again, a little bit of a larger lead there, just 2.4% more for Jesse Bjorkman. Andy Cizik and Tina Wegner both are also in there. If Andy Cizik decided to get out of the race and as an Alaska Independent Party member, they chose Ben, that would be enough to go over the top. But I mean, it's not going to happen. Tina Wegner is the sole Democrat. She only received 12.21% of the vote. So this is going to be between Bjorkman and Carpenter. But again, all four candidates still going to the polls. And so that's going to be interesting to see. James Kaufman, Janice Park, and our very own Harold Borbridge in District F for the Senate. 48% for Democrat Janice Park, 45% for Republican James Kaufman. Harold polling at 5.72%. Now, this is where I ask Harold. Harold, are you going to get out of the race? Because that 5.72%, because here's two Republicans, James and Harold, fighting against Janice Park. Harold, are you going to get out of the race so that your 5.2% will move over to James Kaufman? Because that would mean he would win that race. This is the time that Republicans need to start asking themselves, am I doing the right thing? I mean, I really want to know. Will you step out, Harold, of the race and allow that 5% plus to go over to James? I don't think that's a bad question to ask. Then we get over to the Senate District H, and that's Matt Clayman, the current incumbent, versus Tom McKay, who came over from the House, and candidate Liz Vasquez, who has been in there a couple times. Right now, this is a tough one because even between the two, Clayman is still at 59.64%, almost 60% for Matt Clayman. And Liz Vasquez and Thomas McKay, their combined votes are only 49%. This is going to be a tough race, and it's never going to happen if both remain in the race. Now, Tom and Liz are essentially 1.5 percentage points apart. Tom's at 20.95. Liz is at 19.4. Somebody needs to step out. I would say, I think somebody should be asking Liz whether or not she needs to remain in this race. And then, of course, District J is Forrest Dunbar, 70%. He's not going anywhere. Senate District L, one of the other races, there's two races where the ranked choice voting is going to take effect. The first one is Senate District L. This is the seat held by Kelly Merrick, who's a Republican. There are 4 Republicans and 1 Democrat in this race. So Kelly Merrick is 33.83%, but Jared Goker, the Republican, is at 33.14. She is only about 0.6% ahead right now. Then you've got Ken McCarty at 11 and Sharon Jackson, who I love, at 7.5. So Sharon Jackson, if these numbers hold true, will drop off the ballot because it'll only be the top 4 vote getters. And that will leave Ken McCarty a decision as to whether or not he wants to continue to split the vote of Gecker against Kelly Merrick, who is also a Republican, but again, is caucusing with the power brokers and the Democrats and the big government spenders. So the question to Ken McCarty will be, Ken, will you step out so that Jared can have access to some of those votes? I don't think a lot of Ken McCarty voters are going to vote for Kelly Merrick. I think many of them will vote for anybody but Kelly. So this is the question that we're going to ask people like Ken. Senate District N, David Wilson. It's Republican on Republican violence in District N. It's 3 Republicans: David Wilson, Stephen Wright, and Rob Yunt. Again, Stephen Wright is now in third place at 25%, Rob Yunt at 32, almost 33, and David Wilson at 41.21%. So Wilson, the incumbent, who also has left a bad taste in some people's mouths in the conservative Mat-Su Valley, he has a chance here if both Stephen Wright and Rob Yunt remain in the race. So the question to, at this point, Stephen Wright would be, Stephen, can you do what's right and step out and make it a head-to-head between David and Robert Yunt? Because if Wilson and Yunt get together and Wright's votes, even if they were, fairly evenly split, which I think any vote for Stephen Wright's probably a protest vote against David Wilson for sure, then Yunt could win that at 50%. 55%. Here's the good news. Senate District P, up in the interior. This is the seat held by Scott Kawasaki. Now, again, this is a straw poll. It's a primary, an open primary. But Scott Kawasaki is behind Leslie Hadukovich. It's a narrow margin. It's only about a 2-point margin right now, 2.10, 2.8, 2.08, something like that. But it is, Leslie Hadukovich is currently beating Scott Kawasaki, and there's got to be some panic going on inside that camp right now. That is going to be one of the races to watch for sure this go around. Senate District R, we just talked with Mike Cronk in the last hour. He is ahead. This is a 4-way race with 2 Republicans, an AIP member, and the undeclared Savannah Fletcher, who is a Democrat. I mean, God love her. Dice lady, everything else. She's a Democrat. Mike Cronk, though, with only about a half a point lead, 43.39% to 42.75%. Now, James Squire, James is a good egg. He's a good cat. I like him. But he and his wife Pam are both in races this go around. And I just don't think that they really stand a chance on this. Even if just James dropped out of this race, that could clinch it for Cronk. If Bert Williams from the AIP dropped out, that also could do it, because between the two of them, they account for about 15%, 15% of the overall vote. And since both of those, I think, would be more in alignment with Cronk's viewpoint, I think that could cinch it for Cronk. We'll see what happens there. Donnie Olson ran unopposed. He's good. District 1 in the House, we're getting into the House stuff now. This was a pleasant surprise. Jeremy Bynum, the Republican candidate, 49.98%. The 2 nonpartisan candidates, Grant Echohawk and Agnes Moran, Echo Hawk at 26.69%, and Moran at about 23.3%. So again, an interesting, to see where that race is going. House District 2, which is down in Juneau, Rebecca Himshoot and Andy Story, both unopposed. Sarah Hannon running unopposed. Then we get to House District 5, which is the House district that encompasses part of Kodiak and Seward and everything else. Louise Stutes, unfortunately, just drubbing Leighton Radner. Leighton Radner had him on the program. I really enjoyed talking to him. He's a libertarian candidate. He received almost 20% of the vote, but that means that Louise received 80% of the vote. So not a good thing here. And then the other race that I've been watching very closely, because we know that Homer is my adopted hometown, is the race for House District 6 with Sarah Vance. Sarah Vance, the Republican, also Dawson Slaughter, the Republican, and then two nonpartisan candidates. Sarah Vance is ahead, almost 42.90% for Sarah Vance. That's the good news. Brent Johnson is at 34%, so about 8 points down. Alana Greer, who is, again, another nonpartisan, about 16.8, almost 17%. And then Dawson Slaughter at 5.75%. So again, if Dawson really wants a Republican or conservative to win and cinch it hard, I mean, Sarah's ahead by about 8 points, so I think it's a pretty good lead right now. But if he wanted to solidify it, then he could step off that and that would cinch it, I think, even better. We're going to continue with the different races. We're going to talk a little bit more, and you're going to see exactly how this Republican on Republican stuff is going to work out for the Democrats in some of the future races here. We're going to continue the Michael Dukes Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Back with more right after this.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Yeah, I don't know what happened in the David Wilson race. I mean, what is going on there? Because I haven't found a lot of, in my travels, in my talking to people in general, I've not found a lot of supporters for David Wilson. But the fact that we've got these two other Republicans who are going to be duking it out and beating the hell out of each other is not helping either. Brett Johnson is a Democrat. Look it up. He was called out on the radio. I see Brett has got a lot of. I was down in Homer this last weekend, and I saw about an equal number, maybe a little bit of an edge for Brent, of Brent and Sarah signs. Maybe a little bit of an edge for Brent. But yeah, I mean, he seems to have a lot of support. A lot of support. Joseph just said, I feel like if Nancy ever comes on the show, Rage Against the Machine should be the intro music out of the break. I would love to be able to do that sometimes. At the presidential preference poll, hard D's changed to R to vote against Trump. Yeah. Uninformed voters vote name recognition, not the best candidate. That's true, Terry. There's probably a component of that in the Wilson vote. You're probably right on that. In that they just recognize the name, and it's easier to go with the incumbent than it is, anything else. I could see that. I could see that for sure. Some of the election returns, again, David agreeing with you, some of the election returns show the power of the incumbency name recognition. Lynn's talking about the ranked choice voting thing. It is in front of the Supreme Court. I didn't realize that it was coming up tomorrow Oral arguments were scheduled Friday on an expedited basis for August 22nd, 2 days after the primary election. The plaintiffs are requesting that the court issue a decision on whether the initiative is valid by September 5th, which is the Alaska Division of Elections target date to print ballots for the November 5th election. So we'll see. Let's see. Over on Rumble, Alaska Freedom says, Brad has the support of the hippies and the potheads. Oh, man. Okay, we'll see what happens there. We'll see what happens. Yeah, so, I mean, look, a lot of these seats could be, if the Republicans would just kumbaya a little bit and get together and stop circling the wagons and, and shooting each other, we could fix this. I mean, again, even those who are, posing as Republicans, because there are a few candidates out there posing as Republicans. I'm looking at you, Joy Beth Cottle. You could even overcome them as long as there's no other candidates in the race. But I think this is a good sign. This District 6 that we're looking at right here, this District 6 numbers, these are good numbers. I'm pretty excited about these numbers because they I think they show good, solid support for Sarah. Why is this not zooming in the way? Oh, there we go. Let's try that. Is that better? Can you guys see that better now? Can I go deeper? Can I go deeper? Faster, bigger. Whoa. Okay, there we go. All right. That's a better look at it. Okay. But yeah, I think this is good news right now. It doesn't mean that you stop. Again, it's just a straw poll, right? Don't stop, never stopping. Don't stop, never stopping. If Rob was in my district, I think that's Yunt, but was in my district, I'll be voting for him too. I would love to see Wilson out of there. I don't know. Did you vote yesterday, Melody? You would know because that's the only two things on the ballot yesterday were the House race and, well, three things potentially, and the House and Senate races in your district. So absolutely. Abso-freaking-lutely. Okay. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself here, but we're going to start off over here in House District 7. This is a bit of a disappointment. I would not be lying if I didn't say that this was a bit of a disappointment for me right now. But we'll see what happens there. What does House District 35 look like? Amy, you'll just have to stay tuned. You'll just have to stay tuned. I'm going to rush over to it. House District 35 is definitely one of the interesting ones, and we will get to that here in a second. So don't lose hope, Amy. Melody says, talk to text is not working for me this morning. I'm still on my first cup of coffee. Hey, that's okay. My talks to text never, I don't even want to say sometimes what my talks to text thinks I'm talking about. I don't know. What, are you on drugs, Siri? Go back to sleep. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Oh, yeah. Welcome back. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Broadcasting live around the world at michaeldukeshow.com. Across the state of Alaska on this your favorite radio station and or FM translator. And, of course, simulcasting on Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble right now. So feel free to go out there and see what's going on. All right, we're going to continue now. We're dealing with our discussions on the election results from yesterday's primary election. Some interesting things coming out. We just finished up with House District 6, which was the Sarah Vance position, the Sarah Vance seat. Now we're going on to one that is not quite so rosy because Sarah Vance was ahead by about 6 points against her nearest competitor, Brett Johnson. But in House District 7, a little bit of a sad tale there. Justin Ruffridge, the incumbent, was being challenged by former Representative Ron Gillum. But Ruffridge coming in with 60% of the vote to Gillum's just under 40% of the vote. Now, again, it's a primary, right? It's a straw poll. It's a real, but it's a bellwether. It's an indicator. And it's kind of sad. David Henry in the chat room just said, Gillum is a good guy. I'm disappointed to see his district doesn't seem interested in returning him to Juneau. Yeah. I mean, I could see that that's I feel the same way. I like Ron a lot. I like Justin. I don't always agree with everything he does, but he seems like a nice guy. But I really like Ron, and I'm a little disappointed that he hasn't done better in that race for sure. In House District 8, which was the seat vacated by Ben Carpenter, it's Bill Elam and John Hillier. And this is a horse race. This is neck and neck. 50.78 to 49.22%. John Hillier in the lead by a hair. John Hillier in the lead by less than 50 votes out of 3,000. It's a pretty good deal. House District 9, which is down in the Girdwood area, we've got Lee Ellis, Kai Holland, Lucy Bauer, Brandy Pennington, and we've interviewed Brandy Pennington and Lee Ellis. Both I thought were really good interviews. Unfortunately, they are both in the bottom two. Lucy Bauer is third with 21%, but coming in, those are the three Republicans. The one nonpartisan candidate or non-declared candidate is Kai Holland with 40% of the vote. Now, if you understand Girdwood politics, I'm not that surprised by this. The question will be, will the three Republican candidates, Lee Hollis, Lucy Bauer, and Brandy Pennington, come together and kind of, because they were having discussions, it was being reported that they'd kind of sat down and come out with like an end game plan of what happens after the primary. So this will be interesting because if any one candidate drops out, or if any two candidates drop out, and you're left with just a one-on-one between Kai Holland and, well, Lucy Bauer, let's say, at 21%. Other two candidates, a lot of those votes could go to that. I mean, it could happen. But again, three Republicans versus one nonpartisan, this is what happens every time. With only 40% of the vote, Kai Holland could win. House District 10 is Chuck Kopp versus Craig Johnson. This is supremely disappointing. But Chuck Kopp has got a good machine behind him. He's at 60%. Craig Johnson is really it's a real struggle. Now, it's only 2,100 votes total, 2,200 votes total. And there's a 500 vote difference between Kopp and Johnson, but they're going to have to really work it in there. There's 15,000 potential voters in that area. Only 2,100 votes. 2,200 votes were cast during the primary. So there will be a bit of a bump for the presidential elections. We'll see what happens there. House District 11, it's Julie Colomb versus Walter Featherly. Julie ahead by about 4 points right now, 52.96%. 6 points almost. Then Calvin Schreggy versus Joe Lertzema. Calvin Schreggy in District 12, again, 65% of the vote. That's going to be a tough one, an uphill battle. Andy Josephson is against Heather Gottschall, 56% to 43%. That's actually a closer race than I expected in that area in House District 13, but Andy Josephson's still ahead. Elise Galvin is the nonpartisan, but they did run a Democrat against her. This is the token Democrat, I guess. 83%, almost 84% for Elise Galvin instead of Harry Camden. House District 15, Mia Costello, actually doing very well in that race. I'm happy to see it. With Denny Wells at 44% and Dustin Darden, the perennial candidate who registered as a Democrat but really is not following the Democratic platform. He pulled 4 points, 4.34 points. So even if he wasn't in the race, and let's just assume all those Democratic voters went to Denny, Mia would still be ahead by a couple points. So that's a good race there. District 16, Carol Hall, the Democrat, is ahead 62.5% to Nick Moe, the non-declared. Zach Fields ran unopposed. Cliff Grow and David Nelson in House District 18. Grow defeated Nelson last time, but there was a redistricting thing and everything else. Now David Nelson's back. But Cliff Grow has got a pretty strong lead, 64% to 35% from David Nelson, the Republican, Cliff Grow, the Democrat. But again, the turnout in this precinct was horrific, 4.95%. Out of 12,000 plus voters, only 600 people voted. That's a problem. David, you really need to work to get out the vote. Genevieve Mina is well ahead in her race in District 19, 70% essentially versus the Republican Kaylee Anderson, with Wyatt Wussel, the undeclared, trailing the pack at 5%. Scott Kohlhaas, who we had here on the program, is a libertarian. Great guy, good discussions. He is trailing Andrew Gray, the incumbent in District 20, 67% for Gray, 32% for Scott Kohlhaas, which, again, for a libertarian candidate, it's not a bad, that's not a bad take. I think it was anybody but Andrew Gray for some of those people. And Scott Kohlhaas is where it ran down. Donna Mears is ahead in her district, 56.78% in District 21 versus the Republican Amy Sims at 43%. Stanley Wright in District 22, 49%. He is trailing right now behind Tim Eichscheid, the Democrat. 50% for Eichscheid, 49% for Stanley Wright. That's pretty close. But again, only a 7.7% voter turnout with 1,100 people out of 14,000 plus people voting. So again, a pretty low turnout in some of these areas. It's interesting to see. Whereas you go over to House District 23, they had almost a 19% turnout, with Jamie Allard taking 59%, the Republican candidate and incumbent, versus Jim Arlington at 40%. That's a pretty solid vote. District 24 is Dan Sadler, unopposed. Delana Johnson in 25, unopposed. Kathy Tilton in 26, unopposed. House District 27 is out in the Valley, and this has been a little bit of a contentious thing. Again, Republican on Republican stuff. David Eastman beating out Jubilee Underwood so far, 62% to 38%. I wanted to get to House District 35 because we just looked up and realized that I'm running out of time. House District 35 or 36. Well, we'll talk about this. We'll talk about this tomorrow. How about that? That wraps up stuff for today, unfortunately. There's a lot more to discuss, and we'll be seeing it here in the future. Sorry, folks, I just out of time. I should have been talking faster, apparently. We're back with more. The Michael Duke Show. We'll see you tomorrow. Be kind, love one another, live well. Have a great day. Okay, boy, I don't know why this always takes so long. I always said I can get through this. Nope. But House District 36. So again, here we have. Here we've got the candidates. 34% for Brandon Kowalski, because you're running 4 Republicans in this race. And if all 4 of these Republicans now they're not going to, because it's top 4, right? So who will be dropped out? Well, Pam Good is going to have to drop out, looks like, because there's 6 candidates here. So James Fields and Pam Good, if these numbers hold true, will both drop out of the race. And that will leave Schwanke, Snodgrass, and Mock. Snodgrass is already committed on the program that if he does not win the Republican side of the ballot, that he would drop out, which is unfortunate because I think he really is a solid candidate. But I also liked Rebecca Schwanke, who did come in at 19%. So if Pam Good's 14% and Snodgrass's 14% come together, well, that's almost 30% right there. And even if Dana Mock doesn't drop out, you've got, if they all decided to get behind Rebecca Schwanke, if Pamela Good and Snodgrass both endorsed Rebecca Schwanke, she would take this district handily. Rick said that I was really surprised about Cole Snodgrass's results because he seemed like to be the smartest guy you've ever interviewed. He is one of the best candidates I have ever interviewed in 25 years, especially freshman first-time candidates. One of the smartest guys that I've ever had the pleasure of interviewing. You're 100% on that. But if Pamela Good and Cole both endorsed Rebecca Schwanke, well, that's 20% plus 30%. That's 80%. This could be a seat that could be really put together. I would love to see Cole in it, but Cole is already committed that if he did not win this primary, that he would pull out. He was impressed by what Nick had done and said that he would commit to the same thing. So I would be surprised if Cole did not withdraw from the race, quite honestly. But that, if he does, here's the problem. If he withdraws, that means that Pamela Good would still be in the race. Because the top four, right? And if the fourth one drops out, then the fifth one moves up to fourth position. We saw that during the primary, or we saw that during the race for House when Tara, oh, what's her name? Anyway, she dropped out, and the next one moved up in the congressional race last go round. So Harold, the question is: are you going to drop out of your race so that your 5% can go to Kaufman, so that the Parks can be beat? Are you going to step out of your race, Harold? That's the question. I think you were away when we talked about it earlier. I'm asking, because with 5%, you have very little chance of doing anything. But if you gave that 5% over, you've got a pretty good chance of making something happen. CJ McCormick is in trouble. CJ McCormick is the incumbent, is being beat by Nellie Jimmy, the other Democrat, 42. This is the only one where this is really working out right here. Willie Keppel pulled 21%. Good for you, Willie. Harold says he's not pulling out. He says he's not going to pull out of the race. So if Janet wins, well, you know who you can point the finger at. No, Harold has every right to remain in the race if he wants to. I don't want to say that he doesn't. He's got every right to do it. All right. Well, we're out of time. I got to go. I got stuff to do today. You could go check this out at just Google Alaska primary election results, and it'll be the top link on the page. You can go over there and check it out. All right, my friends, thanks for coming on board and joining us. We appreciate you being with us. We will see you tomorrow right here on the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Don't forget to like and share and do all the things. Check us out on the Common Sense Corps if you want to be part of the Cool Kids Club over there. We will see you guys tomorrow. Have a great day.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.